Hello everyone, and welcome back to Foreign Eyes on America. Across Asia, journalists and scholars have long watched the American experiment in democracy with fascination. To them, it is not merely a political system, it is a living drama that tests its strength every day, in full view of the world. From Seoul to Singapore, writers call the United States a laboratory of freedom, where disagreement itself becomes a civic ritual. America's democracy is messy, loud, and imperfect, but that is precisely what makes it remarkable. In Japan, Asahi Shimbun once wrote, "The miracle of America is not perfection, but correction." The paper admired the U.S. for confronting its flaws, from racial injustice to corruption, through open debate and reform. While many nations hide conflict, America airs it publicly, trusting that institutions are stronger than pride. To Japanese readers, that openness feels risky yet admirable, a sign of confidence rather than chaos. In South Korea, editorials in Chosun Ilbo and Jungang Ilbo highlight the nation's resilience. Even when presidents face impeachment or mass protests, the system does not collapse. Instead, it reaffirms that no one stands above the law. Every crisis, one Korean columnist wrote, is an exercise in endurance. To Koreans, America's power lies not in avoiding mistakes, but in fixing them transparently. India's Hindustan Times praises the U.S. for maintaining electoral integrity amid polarization. The paper contrasts America's predictable, law-bound elections with Asia's more controlled systems. Even in division, Indian commentators see discipline, a deep trust in process. That faith in institutions, they argue, is what keeps America steady. In Taiwan, Liberty Times calls U.S. democracy messy but magnetic. It celebrates diversity as America's secret strength: 50 states, countless opinions, yet one functioning whole. For Taiwanese observers, America's openness to dissent feels both chaotic and liberating. Opposition there is not suppressed but amplified, forming a symphony of competing truths. Across Asia, one democratic ritual still fascinates observers: the peaceful transfer of power. After fierce elections, the loser concedes, and the system moves on. To nations where change can trigger crisis, this continuity is astonishing. As a Hong Kong columnist once wrote, "America's chaos is still safer than our silence." What truly impresses Asian media is America's resilience through transparency. Democracy in the U.S. is constantly criticized and tested, yet it endures. Scandals and protests do not destroy it, they renew it. From Asia's view, that is the secret of American strength. The ability to stumble without falling, to argue without breaking, to reform without fear. And so, Asian writers describe American democracy not as perfect, but as alive. It argues, it bleeds, it changes, and that is why it survives. For centuries, America's strength has not been perfection but reinvention. Each generation inherits both freedom and failure and then rewrites the story. That rhythm of renewal fascinates Asian commentators, who see a system that repairs itself in public view. When injustice erupts, protests fill the streets and hearings unfold on live TV. Yet instead of disintegrating, the republic reforms and absorbs the lesson. In Asia, such turbulence might signal danger. In America, it signals life. One Japanese editorial compared it to a heartbeat, irregular but alive. Korean columnists stress that U.S. democracy survives because it trusts procedure over personality. Even when leaders polarize the nation, institutions outlast them. Courts rule, journalists investigate, voters return. That cycle prevents decay. To them, America functions like a self-resetting machine, never flawless, never still. Indian writers marvel that endless legal battles, inquiries, and media scrutiny coexist without collapse. Each controversy becomes an audit of power. Transparency, one Delhi professor said, is not weakness, it's therapy. By exposing flaws, America preserves credibility, a paradox closed societies can't copy. Taiwanese scholars see diversity itself as stability. When 50 states argue, policies evolve. America's decentralization looks chaotic, yet one state's mistake seldom poisons the whole. That flexibility explains endurance where rigid systems freeze. Analysts across Asia admire America's emotional endurance, the will to disagree fiercely yet still return to the same table. From Watergate to civil rights, each crisis tests the nation's immune system. And every recovery reinforces faith in constitutional order. A Korean journalist wrote, "America bleeds in daylight so it can heal by night." Even critics who dislike U.S. policies admit respect for its rhythm of reform. Mistakes lead to debate, debate to correction, correction to renewal. It's slow and exhausting but keeps democracy from turning into dogma. Where others demand silence for unity, America demands argument for progress. For Asian observers, this relentless transparency is America's moral export. It proves freedom is not possession but maintenance. Elections, protests, and journalism keep the gears turning. As one Japanese commentator concluded, America's power is not that it never falls but that it always stands back up, in front of everyone. For decades, Asian journalists have not only observed American democracy, but studied it, dissected it, and debated what makes it survive. In newspapers from Tokyo to Taipei, from New Delhi to Seoul, one theme keeps returning: the United States does not fear imperfection, it transforms it. To many Asian observers, that is the essence of its democratic resilience. Japanese commentators in the Japan Times have written that America's openness is its self-defense. They point out that every scandal, every protest, and every court battle plays out in public view. Rather than weaken the system, exposure strengthens it. The willingness to display flaws, they argue, is what prevents decay. In contrast, closed systems appear strong but often rot in silence. Korean journalists describe America as a self-renewing nation. Even in polarization, they note, there is motion: elections continue, courts operate, and citizens debate instead of surrendering. One Hank Yo-Ri editorial stated, "Democracy is not a structure but a heartbeat. That rhythm, however noisy, assures continuity. It tells the world that freedom is not static, it must be exercised to stay alive." From India's Times now to Taiwan's United Daily News, Asian writers highlight that the U.S. endures not because it hides division, but because it manages it. They admire the check and balance choreography, where institutions counter each other like dancers on a crowded stage. Power shifts hands, yet the melody continues. Even chaos follows a rhythm, guided by rules that everyone respects. Southeast Asian scholars go further, calling America's democracy an emotional discipline. They argue that it survives not through consensus, but through controlled tension, conflict processed within boundaries. This concept resonates strongly in regions where disagreement is often seen as disloyalty. For them, America's endurance shows that democracy's true test is not order, but elasticity. Chinese language analysts in Hong Kong and Singapore, despite political constraints, acknowledge America's moral export: the belief that power must always be questioned. They write that while authoritarian states boast of efficiency, America demonstrates something more: lasting legitimacy through transparency. In their view, this is the soft armor that shields the republic, even when politics look brutal. Throughout Asia, this perception of America as a noisy yet self-healing democracy has shaped generations of thinkers, reformers, and journalists. It challenges them to imagine governance not as obedience but as conversation. Many admit that such a system is hard to copy. It requires faith in patience and institutions. But they also recognize that this faith, the trust that freedom can survive chaos, is the secret that keeps the American experiment alive. As one Indian editorial beautifully concluded, democracy is not a destination, but a constant pilgrimage. It must be renewed every day, through words, votes, and courage. And in that daily struggle, Asia sees not America's arrogance, but its endurance. Thank you for watching Foreign Eyes on America. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.